Okay, 1 second. And you should be broadcasting. Yep, you're broadcasting now. So you're live.
Okay, great. We'll call the meeting to order. This is Joe, and I'll ask everybody to give their name before they say something because I don't have video. I just have the phone.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Joe,
I'll
are you
start.
leading the meeting or Evie?
Order.
yeah, we've called the meeting to order. And Evie, do you have anything that you want to discuss prior to our voting on the invoices?
No, it's just that Anne wanted to go through the scholarship process because she feels that it needs to be reviewed. So I don't know if she is
So this is
joining.
Roger. She is there.
Okay.
Would you like me to bring her into the meeting right now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
1 second. Just 1 second, Ann. She should show up.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay, let's do it in this fashion. And this is Joe. Let's vote on the invoices individually if you want, Evie. You can announce them, and we've all seen them. We all have them. And then after that, we'll discuss the Siegel Trust, okay? Is that okay with you all?
That's
Yes.
fine.
All right. So Evie, just bring up each invoice, mention it, and we'll vote on it.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
I don't know if I have them in the same order as you do, but there aren't that many, so we should be pretty quick. I have one from the library for $487.95.
Joe votes yes.
Hayden votes yes.
And Dan votes yes.
Okay, I have another from the library for $1,819.70.
Joe votes yes.
Hayden votes yes.
And Dan votes yes.
I have one from the school business office out of the Minnow McDonald Trust for $103.75. You should have the backup to that.
Evie,
Joe votes yes.
on that one, there were a handful of invoices in addition to the one for $103. What were those?
It's just the one to Follett for autumn schoolcraft.
Right, but then behind that there were 6 additional pages of invoices.
These are just the approvals. And I don't know the information on the back. It's part of it, but it probably did not come from the trust fund. Are you familiar with this at all, Ann? I don't want to put you on the spot.
I'm not familiar with that particular transaction. I know that it was being submitted, and it would have had approvals attached to a purchase order as well as the invoices themselves.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Mhm.
So
Right, I mean,
it's a portion. But they're only asking for the 103.75, which is.
yeah, so I'm fine with that. I just was wondering why what the other invoices were for. But I'll vote to approve it.
Okay, this is Joe. I assume therefore it has passed, Evie, so you can go on to the next one.
Okay. I have another from the business school business office for $603.35. And I believe
I
it's the
vote,
same situation where we have a PO attached to it.
I vote yes on that one also.
Yes. Hayden votes yes.
And Dan votes yes.
Okay, Needham Revitalization Trust.
I vote yes on that one. I recall that one very vividly.
We have 2 from them. One came in late. Did you get that one? I think I sent it
Yeah.
today.
Yes, that was the one. Yeah, that was the one with a credit on it also, right?
Okay, All American Signs, which is their routine quarterly, and then Downtown Decorations.
I vote yes.
Hayden votes yes.
And Dan votes yes.
Okay. Now we come to the, make sure I have everything here. Now we come to the scholarships. We've got a total of
Okay.
$263,645 in scholarships. And Ann, did you want to address the process?
I'm happy to do that now if you'd like, or I don't know if you're approving the amounts. I'm happy to do whatever you'd like me to do.
Well, let's discuss it and then make sure that we're all doing it properly and that we will continue to do it properly in the future. So, as I understand, it's an income-only scholarship, and we don't know how the income is calculated. We should decide how that is done and what the annual time frame, what the time frame is, as I understand it. And maybe Eva, you can tell us, or maybe Ann, you can, as to whether it's a January to December time period or a fiscal year period ending in June or whatever it is at the town ends their fiscal year on these things.
Well, I normally supply, oh, sorry, Ann. I
Go ahead.
normally supply the spreadsheet as of June 30th so that they
Yes.
get it timely and, award the scholarships. So I would say it would be based on a fiscal year, the income.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
income is allocated just like any other trust fund is allocated. So,
I think I would just add to that what we are interested in doing is because students receive the booklet of scholarships that they can apply to and submit an application for in the January timeframe, and it fluctuates a little bit from year to year, but it's right in the middle of the year. What we are asking and what we're seeking is essentially a process whereby we would know the final amount that the commissioners would be willing to allocate under each of the town-held scholarships as of that date. The complication for us comes when there is a scholarship that was advertised. In this case, the Siegel Scholarship was advertised at a total of $1,600 based upon the expendable portion of the scholarship. It was advertised at $1,600 and it was awarded to a student at $1,600. The commissioners, I believe, have an interest, and we can obviously accommodate that, of awarding that scholarship at the $12,000, and that may have included a portion of the non-expendable portion of the scholarship. But when the amount is awarded at a different rate than what is advertised, we have problems internally. And some of the problems are that we could have potentially had more interested applicants for a $12,000 scholarship back in January than for a $1,600 scholarship. That's one issue. And the second issue is that by now kids have already accepted an application to a school, or most have and know where they're going to school, and that includes a financial aid package. And unfortunately for those kids, the financial aid package that they get is contingent upon any aid that they receive from outside sources. So Needham Public Schools and the scholarships you administer and disperse are one of those. So if you are increasing the amount of financial aid that a student gets, and they didn't know that, that could result in an overall reduction in the aid that the school gives them. So what I'm going to suggest is that we potentially confirm with you, the commissioners, before our January deadline, what the final amount is that you'd like to award, and that be what we advertise, and that what we vote or what you vote be consistent with what the amount is that's advertised.
That's a good idea.
That seems appropriate to me. This is Joe speaking. Yeah, that seems appropriate to me.
Okay.
Now the question is, and I'm going to ask you first, how do you think we should decide what that number is?
Well, that would be up to you. I mean, the way the trust reads is it's the income. And I think Hayden had made a good point in saying that, well, do we want to award the entire amount of the income? Because what if we have a bad year, like the year coming up? I mean, we're not, I don't know what
Can I
interest.
step in and ask a question on that, Evie? So
Sure.
I think maybe the first question is we need to agree on the definition of income. So with no other context, I would read that as sort of cash paid out by investments like coupons on bonds and dividends on stocks. In which case, whether you have a kind of a good year in the market or bad year in the market, doesn't really matter that much. It's just whatever sort of the yield on the portfolio is. It seems like this is an endowment style scholarship, and that's, I would think, typically how an endowment style scholarship would work. And then I see also that in the trust document, there's handwritten note in the corner that says 4% per year. I'm not sure where that comes from, or if there's some subsequent agreement or discussion that refers to, but the language of the trust itself says pay out the income every year.
I think that was received, the commissioners decided that, I believe, before we actually took a serious look. Either we had not gotten the trust document, or they took we didn't take a serious look at the document itself. So, I mean, it could have been, normally we say 4% is what the commissioners decide.
That's right. Normally we say 4% of the corpus of the fund each year, and that way all future generations of students get the, if you will, the inflation adjusted amount of the beginning scholarship, which I recall was either $6,000 or $8,000 based on what I thought was a $200,000 deposit. Ebby says it was $150, and I can't fault. I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
This is Hayden. I agree with Dan that if you take income to the letter of the law, what he said is accurate. But I do think, and that's maybe why there was a 4% note there, that a lot of endowments smooth their returns over time. Maybe do it based on a 5-year return or something like that. Because if you don't include capital gains, I mean, income these days is not that high relative to returns a lot of times.
Yeah.
So the assets would just keep growing significantly, and we wouldn't be paying out much of it. So I think it would be better if we can interpret it as some kind of smooth return, and 4% is pretty common to distribute in kind of endowment type of situations.
Would the 4% be based on, there are three things, but 4% wouldn't be based on 4% of the income. Would it be based on the entire fund, non-expendable and expendable, or just the expendable piece?
No, the
Because
entire.
it does say the income would be distributed.
Yeah, I think it would be the entire amount, although if at some point, if we had really bad, returns for an extended period, we just can't go, I assume, below the, eat into the expendable amount, unexpendable amount.
Of course, we've had really good returns for an extended period, so these things offset each other over time. So, I mean, Hayden, I agree with your stance in theory, but then the question is just how much right do we have to sort of square that with what it says in the document?
Right.
Well, would it be a not to exceed type situation where you could do, like you said, smooth it out? I don't know if you want to establish a percentage or a dollar amount, but not to exceed the amount of interest earned during a given year, something like that. I don't know, just throwing that out.
Yeah, Dan, another interpretation without really getting too aggressive is to include realized gains. In other words, kind of like taxable income. And then that would be bigger, but it also would be very choppy.
Yeah.
No, we don't want that. We
Include unrealized?
Realized.
best way to do this is to have a specific number that grows over time, but is low enough so that the account will always be able to deliver that amount or more in subsequent years. So the 4% of the corpus makes sense to me. But if you want to say on a rolling 3-year or a rolling 5-year basis, that's okay. I recall this fund very carefully, that we had suggested, Bill Supple and I had suggested that 4% of the corpus, and I don't see it in any of the documents except for what you told me, Dan, that it was written in pencil somewhere on one of the documents that you have.
No, I have the original document.
Is it written on that one, or do you know?
It's written on the version that Evie emailed, and it's also written on, I sent around a link via box.com to the document earlier, so you could see it on page 8. It looks like it says 4% per year per something, and I don't know if that's someone's name or if it's like COMM for commissioners, or I don't know what that's.
That was something that, oh, what's his name? Ford did. Ford Peckham wrote those up. Remember, he took the books. I don't know, were you on the committee then, Joe? I think you were. No, maybe not.
Yes, no, I was here when, yeah.
And he went through each of the scholarships and he wrote like a cover sheet. Unfortunately, his handwriting wasn't the best. Let me see.
Well, Ford is still around town, so, and I will see him perhaps this Sunday, and if I do, I'll hail him on this. But in the meantime, let's try to find out what we agree to going forward on this. And if you have some thoughts, please feel free to do them. One of the things we can't do is do the, as Hayden suggested, we can't do the income plus the capital gains because that'll vary too much from year to year.
But whenever we look at the income, it does include capital gains. I mean, it's separated on the spreadsheet, but when we look at income, it's based on everything. I mean, I can separate it, but
Evie, I had another question while you're looking. Is there a simple way even to calculate the income on the overall trust and then attribute that to the Siegel Trust?
I'm sorry.
Is there a simple way? Do we have all the information we need to calculate what the income would be if we decide to go that route?
Well, the way we do it now is we allocate it according to the amount of money based on the total. It's all done very basic, simple allocation percentage.
But to answer Hayden's question,
really-
you could break down for the last fiscal year how much the scholarship earned in sort of unrealized gains, realized gains, and dividends and interest.
Do we have that for the last fiscal year? Yeah.
I think that's what you're asking, right?
You guys, you should have.
Yeah. Okay.
This is Ann. I guess I might also suggest that you use the prior year, because if we're looking to come to you, say in October or November, to obtain the amounts that we'll advertise in December and January, you might not know what your prospective income would be that you would earn in the current year, of course.
I agree. So I think it sounds like if we're going to do income only, we do it through, like this year we would have done through June 30, 2019. But if we can do the 4%, which is, I think, a better way to go, ignoring the issue of whether that's not what the donor wanted, then, I assume we would do it for 4% at the end, 4% of what we had at the end of June 19.
June of 2019. That to me makes the most sense for us to do this going forward.
What is that? I'm sorry.
4% of the June 30, 19 balance,
Total balance,
total balance.
include expendable and not expendable.
Yes.
Okay.
Down to the nearest $100. Or if someone wants to suggest down to the nearest 1,000, they can do that too.
If I were the high school principal, and I would suggest maybe $1,000 increments, unless it's a smaller scholarship, in which case $50 might be material.
Okay, so now, do we have an idea what the purpose of this fund was last June 30th? If you have your information in front of you, Evie, you can just tell us what the number is on your scholarship slice, or what the total value of the trust is as the most recent time period. Okay, that you have it.
$253,792.
So that would be a $10,000 scholarship,
Right.
approximately. That seems to me what they wanted to do. Okay? In my conversation, because I know I had the conversation with either the lawyer and I got a verbal okay, and I just don't, I'm not certain. I'm just not certain, but I remember this trust and I remember what's coming in. And they were looking for how they wanted us to spend that money. But
So do we want to make a tentative decision to do that 4% of the previous fiscal year end balance, with the idea that Joe will talk to Ford Peckham and get his additional input?
yeah, I will accept a motion to that effect.
Okay.
Meaning it's not an official, like we all agree that it would be a good idea to do it that way, but Joe will research whether we have the right to do that.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna jump in here because it's the actual trust agreement. The 10% to the Needham High School, and I have a copy of a check that is for $150,000. So to me, that would represent the non-expendable portion, which is incorrect on the spreadsheet, which has to be fixed. The Board of Commissioners to be left in trust to the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds of the Town of Needham, who shall manage and control same and distribute the annual income for a scholarship award to an outstanding mathematics senior class high school student. Shall be paid by the headmaster, faculty, math department, et cetera, to be known as the Charles and Bernice Siegel Memorial Fund.
Right. So it says pretty clearly annual income. So the question is how much, Hayden, I totally agree with you that maybe this wasn't anticipating a long-term sort of low yield environment, but it says what it says. Like, do we have the right to sort of just change the approach to one we feel is better?
Well,
Okay. But,
I guess what I would add is it sounds like Joe spoke to the people involved to try and clarify, and maybe that's the purpose of that note written in there. And I know that's not the legal document, but there, as we already talked about, there's a lot of ways of defining what income is.
Well, I do have a letter from a Kirkham Law Offices dated March 2006. In accordance with Article 2 of her will, Mrs. Siegel bequests 10% of the residue of her estate to the establishment of a scholarship fund. The exact language in the will is as follows. I give and bequest and devise the rest, residue of remainder of my estate, both real and personal, whatsoever kind and character, whatever located as follows. Same thing I just read, 10% to the Needham High School to be left in trust to the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds, who shall manage and control same and distribute the annual income for a scholarship award to an outstanding mathematics senior high school student made by the headmaster, et cetera, et cetera. The income is to be paid each year to one senior student in the study of mathematics as applicable committee. I am enclosing a check payable, et cetera, which was $150,000.
Excuse me, Joe, this is Dan.
yeah.
Do we have minutes from meetings of the commissioners dating back to 2007 in Word or PDF?
I may have them, not at my fingertips, but I can probably.
If you have them in any kind of electronic format and you can get them to me, I could, just really quickly search through them and just find any references to Siegel and very quickly see what was discussed or agreed when.
Okay, it would be,
All right, so how about this? After this call, I'll send you a link that you can use to send me whatever files you have en masse.
they may be in paper.
Oh, if they're paper, I can't,
I can scan them and send them to you. No, Dan, no, don't.
Okay. Well, another thing we can do
I
is
will see what I can do. I might have them electronic.
Okay, all right.
we can table the decision of how we're going to identify this scholarship to our next meeting, which will probably be sometime in September.
Yeah.
And review that document that, if in fact we find one, and review all of the information that we have and review it again. And Ann, you'll be invited again to that meeting, and we can try to hone down how this is going to be done going forward. And we accept what has been done this year.
Okay. Just so that I can clarify, is the amount that is awarded this year going to still be the $12,000?
1,600 or 12,000?
No, we're gonna do what you were suggested, Ann, which was the money that you put in is the money that will be awarded for this year. And Evie, you haven't done anything differently, have you?
Nate, no.
So there has
No,
been.
I would have, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, there has been some discussion now that we received a different number for you. We've gone back to the high school principal as well as the superintendent to clarify whether they would be willing to award the higher number based on what you had indicated previously.
And it sounded like you preferred that we didn't change the amount. Is that true?
So what would be preferable is not to change the amount from the award, but at this point, there may have now been some communications back to the high school principal that the number should have been 12,000 and not 1,600. So if you could clarify for me, I don't know if there's been a reach out to the student about the different amount.
Well, we have.
That has happened.
We haven't reached out to the student for sure.
So the high school principal may have, because of the very different amount that was being discussed. So this is maybe what happens sometimes when there is a little bit of lack of clarity. So trying to avoid this in the future would be maybe preferable.
So Ann, do you know who reached out to the principal? Do you know how he got wind of this?
So I did. When I received information from Evie and from Melanie Bisbus in my office, who is the liaison to Evie around this, that the award had been about $12,000 from you. Then I had gone back to the high school principal and the superintendent because I needed to make sure from their standpoint that this would be okay with them, that the award would be different than what had been, basically provided on class day or advertised on class day. So they both indicated that they would be willing to give the higher award, and that I had gotten that clarification back today. So whether they've reached out already to the student, I don't know.
I think when I was first approached and I got a proposed amount from the commissioners, my response was that to Melanie was that I had to speak to the commissioners about it. And the thought was that we would try to, because it was so confusing, that we would try to go with the 1,600 this year and then fix it for next year. But if you've already told the student, then we have a.
If I can reach Aaron Seacott by phone right now, I'd be happy to update the commissioners about whether that has actually happened, whether there's been a reach out to the student. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to connect with him during this conversation, but I can give it a try.
Okay.
Before you do, you raised a lot of good points, and about, fairness issues here, and did we have, if we had advertised the scholarship at its correct amount, would we have gotten a much different response and all these things? So do we even want to entertain the notion of paying out the significantly higher amount, or should we just say we made a mistake this year and we'll have an outsized scholarship next year, or add it to the principal and say we just missed a year? Or it seems like of all the things we could think of, going back now after the fact and just saying, guess what, bank error in your favor, you got a really big scholarship, seems like it could cause more issues than it could cause unintended issues, like you said.
If there's been a reach out to the student, then that might make things a little bit more difficult. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
if you'd
definitely.
if you'd allow me to step away from a second, I can just see if I can reach the principal.
I just
Please,
would,
Ann, and we'll wait for you to return.
I think the bottom line is we're flexible to do what you and or the principal want to do. So if you want to talk to him, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll be right back. I'll shut off my
Okay.
video for a minute.
I agree with you, Hayden. I think that I don't think it's our place to sort of make that judgment, but I think Anne is in a great position to make the judgment. So let's let her make the judgment.
Okay. And just,
Right.
sorry.
It's a little concerning to me because I had reached out to them and told them that the difference in the award and what the commissioners might recommend. And I assumed that they would not go anywhere with it until I spoke to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be my assumption too. But let me just ask this quick question, Evie. Do you in fact know what the income is for an individual trust at the end of June?
Yes, I do.
You do. Okay.
I mean, I have it. And that's where it's total income and gains for that trust
Yeah.
was $13,462.57.
I'm sorry, you said
Gains were
income and-
$4,800,
What was just the income?
just the income. $8,634, round numbers.
Does that sound right to you, Hayden, and you, Dan? That the
Yes.
income would be about 8,000?
What
I
was
would
the size
say-
of the scholarship? I mean, of the trust?
What was the, on what balance roughly? Was it,
Well, she said the balance was 250,000 at year end. So in the middle of June last year, it would probably be 200 to 225, somewhere in there.
Beginning of the year was 249,300, beginning of the year, but we gave it a scholarship and
all right, so that's like a little over 3%, 3.5%, which
Yeah.
sounds a little high, but I guess it's possible. I mean, actually it seems a little hard to believe because we have like 2/3 in equities and those yield no more than I'd say 2%.
We're overweight in tips, which yield
Yeah,
a little. I mean,
but anyway,
Yeah, we do have a, yeah.
I mean, I guess I would have expected to be a little under 3% as opposed to a little more than 3%.
Yeah.
Excuse me, gentlemen, I have not been able to reach the principal. He is not answering his phone. I guess given where we are in this situation, I might respectfully request that you continue to, that you go with the $12,000 as that is now a new number that is in circulation. And I can't tell whether that has been communicated. to
That was never an exact amount. That was an estimate of where I thought the value of the trust fund was, and I certainly overreacted to it. I mean, it was a lot smaller than what $12,000 would be. And it was just a guess. And I just said, maybe it's supposed to be this amount and let's talk about it.
Thank you.
So I guess I would say stay with the 1,600 until we get back to you in September.
Okay.
that too late, though, Ann, to really deal with this?
It might be for the student, but.
Yeah.
Well, if the
It's not too late.
student
It's
has
not-
been approached, then we should review that again, and we can do that again before September.
Okay.
Could it be like I'm just gonna throw this out, like for maybe not their first year, the second year? If they don't decide it until the September? Could the balance of the award, whatever it is, be given for the second year of school? Because I know with financial aid and all that stuff, or are we just making it too complicated?
Well, I think it sounds like it's too complicated to me, but
Okay.
What's 4%? what was, I'm sorry, Abby, I didn't write down the balance at June 30th. What was it again?
At June 30th. the
June 30,
total
19.
balance- Total balance was $253,793.
Okay, so 12 is really too high under any calculation.
Exactly right. Should be closer to 10,000, right?
Yeah. So I was going to suggest that we vote to allow, since we may not meet again for a while, allow Ann and the principal to determine the amount somewhere between 1,600 and 10,000 based on their view of what's happened. How does that sound?
I'm sorry, Hayden, why, if we're going to do that, why don't we use the actual number, the actual income number that Evie gave us? I think she said about $8,500. I agree with you, it seems kind of high, but that is what our accounting records show. So wouldn't it make sense to use that actual number so we're not just kind of leaving that open-ended?
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah. I accept the motion to that effect.
Okay, so just so I make
What was the
sure I
motion?
get the right wording on the motion.
Yeah,
The motion is we grant a scholarship between 1,600 and what was the income amount? Debbie?
8,500. 8,500.
8,500 at the discretion of Ann and the principal of the high school.
And
Thank
if
you
we
very
could
much for that.
go,
Appreciate that.
Does that
Can I get
work?
a second of that motion?
I second it.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Joe says aye.
Aye. Hayden says aye.
Dan says aye. I guess Hayden, just in the minutes, maybe make a note of how we came to that number.
Yep.
And then we will get back to you the next time we meet about how this is going to be done.
That's
In the
perfect.
future.
I think that would be great. We can plan an earlier communication next year and make sure that everybody's on board with the same amounts. So thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
And
and
all right,
before you drop off, could you let me know what your decision is? Because these are ready to be processed. So once the commissioners approve it. So,
So what we did is we pulled off this particular scholarship from the warrant.
okay,
So this can be processed on the next warrant. So,
perfect. All right. So I will take it off what I have here as well,
okay.
reducing the amount of this.
So we'll put it on to the next one.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks for all
Thank
your
you
help.
so much. I appreciate your flexibility and thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm going to need a vote on the scholarships, though.
On the scholarships, yeah, okay. Let's entertain a motion that we accept the scholarships with, as indicated by the warrant that is in the possession of Debbie.
I'm removing the Siegel scholarship.
Right.
Okay. Total is $162,045.
I vote aye.
I vote to approve. It's Hayden.
And I also approve. This is Dan.
So the ayes have it, and it's approved, Evie.
Sorry.
And we'll find
Joe,
an
can you say
answer
that
to this.
again? I don't think Evie heard you.
I didn't hear. I'm sorry, Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry, the vote has been approved for the, for you to pay that warrant of those scholarships as indicated by you earlier.
Correct. Yes.
What should be our process for kind of remembering to communicate this amount to Anne? Should we maybe set like our September meeting or our October meeting in perpetuity to have this as kind of a recurring task?
No, we're going to decide how it's going to be done going forward. And the steps we're going to take is, number one, we're going to review the documents of the meetings back to March of 2007, number one. Secondly, my role is to find Ford Peckham and to find out what he knows of this scholarship and report that to us at our next meeting, which we assume is going to be in September. and hopefully it will be in person. And then we're going to tell Ann Galati, what we decide at that, when we have all that information in front of us.
So Joe, I think you answered regarding Siegel specifically, which I agree with what you said. I think Dan was asking about in general about granting the amounts. Should we have like our November meeting or something like that be dedicated to that, to making sure we have the right amounts? Or do we want to have Ann submit them first? I think,
No, we can do a November meeting. That'd be fine.
okay.
And I'll make a mental note and a written note that the November meeting would discuss scholarships, and we'll talk to Ann about it.
Yeah, make sure you let me know because I'm not going to remember November.
Okay. Do we have anything else to discuss? I know that this was kind of tough, but I really think it's important that we do this right, whatever that right is. Okay. And I'm flexible, but to be honest with you, Dan, when you sent me this stuff, I was taken aback. So there we have it.
Hopefully, instead of Zoom next time, if we can't be back in our usual cozy conference room in the basement, maybe we can be at a picnic table on the town green.
Sure, that makes some sense to me.
I thought Evie said there was a problem with that or something. I don't know.
Or maybe on
Okay,
the
we might have.
town hall or something.
Evie, did you say there's a problem having our meeting outside or something? I can't remember. Evie, you still there?
Are we adjourned?
Debbie?
Did you call for adjournment? I'm sorry. Did you ask me something? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We did.
I have trouble hearing this. So I
We were
apologize.
talking about whether we could, if we can't meet inside, whether we could meet like at a picnic table, and I thought that came up this time and there was an issue with that.
Yeah, I asked if we could meet outside and I was told no because the meetings had to be public and quote unquote, there may be 30,000 Needham residents show up. So we have to either do Zoom or, teleconference or something, Zoom or.
By that logic, we should have our meetings in, in Newman Auditorium or something.
Well, I think one of the issues, I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the issues actually has to do with the way that the rules were adapted for these meetings is that they have to be able to be recorded. And that's really what the issue is too, is that
Even if we meet inside?
if you meet inside, yeah, I mean, that's really the issue is they have to be recorded. If we're doing a Zoom meeting, at this point in time,
No, but
that's basically what the rules are for these remote meetings. I mean,
Roger.
when everything goes back to the new normal, the idea is that you won't be doing Zoom meetings.
right. I think we were
'cause-
talking about an in-person meeting, not a Zoom meeting.
We were discussing if we could potentially meet, say, on the town green in front of town hall.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant having a Zoom meeting. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was doing two things.
And going back to Evie's comment, I mean, the town meeting was just held outside.
Yeah,
So I don't understand why we can't do it. But anyway, we can, I guess, get to that point in September.
I'm
thought
sorry.
it
I
was a
apologize.
marvelous
I apologize for one more thing. Did you guys actually adjourn the meeting?
No.
Okay. All right. Because we're still recording, so I just wanted to make sure.
All right. So should we figure out our next meeting, whether it's in person or not?
No, I think what we should do is we should say, well, it's going to be in September. So yeah, if you want to, we can put a September date. I don't have one that gives the dates of Rosh Hashanah or anything like that, but maybe you do. The Wednesday, the third Wednesday is the 16th of September.
Dan, do you happen to know when Rosh Hashanah is?
It is the 19th and 20th, so the 16th would be fine.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
and let's do it at 4:30 again.
Sure.
Okay, let's assume we get into the town hall.
Okay.
yeah, I think that's a good assumption. I don't know. I think they're really starting to loosen up a little bit, but not totally.
Yeah.
more and more people can be working and town hall's still closed but you have to come in by appointment only. So I don't know how long that's going to last. So.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll be in touch. We got 3 months, so we've got some time to do it.
Okay.
Now let's entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Dan.
Meeting is adjourned. Evie, take good care of yourself.
You
you
too,
too.
guys. You too. Behave. I don't want to hear any problems going on. And
All right.
good summer. And, we'll do the usual summer thing with the
Okay.
invoices and stuff.
Sure.